Welcome, everyone, to our podcast today. My name is Nahani, and I'm co hosting this conversation with Cindy here. We are discussing mental health of students in relation to COVID-19. Both Cindy and I are members of the Free Your Mind organization that has organized this podcast. Free Your Mind is a youth based team dedicated to promote mental health awareness.
Before we kick off, we would like to acknowledge that we are on traditional territories in Alberta of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuits whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
We would also like to recognize that the conversation of mental health can sometimes be difficult and present some different sensitivities. Here, our goal is to create a safe space for everyone to share without judgment. As well, our guest speakers are encouraged to only share what they feel comfortable presenting. Taking breaks or opting out of questions is always welcome, just so you guys know.
With this, I would like to introduce our speakers. For this podcast, we are joined by a couple of fellow students. If each of you would like to say a couple words to our staff to start off.
Yeah, hi. So, should I just introduce myself?
Totally.
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Wenzi, and I am a student. I'm a first-year student in University of Alberta, and I am majoring in linguistics. And today, I'm invited by my friend Cindy. Yeah, she invited me here, which is great.
Hi, I'm Cassiopeia. I'm in grade 10. I go to Western Canada High School, and I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you, speakers. As March marks the anniversary of COVID-19 being announced as a global pandemic, we are joined here to share the process of healing, accepting, and overcoming that has occurred over the past year. This period has been unique, yet a very collective struggle for everyone. With this in mind, we have accumulated a few questions to guide our conversation. Question number 1. How would you describe your relationship to self and to your emotions before the COVID-19 outbreak? How has it changed, if it has changed?
Yeah, so right before the outbreak, I was actually in grade 12. I was a high school student in grade 12. At that time, I would say I was already feeling a bit stressed from school, simply because of the fact that in grade 12, we have to worry about getting good grades and worrying about applying for universities. So that process was quite stressful for me. But since the COVID-19 outbreak happened, which is back in February, March 2020, I would say that I felt even more stressed from the uncertainty of things. Yeah, but at the same time, I think that being able to kind of like just the change of everything kind of made my struggles a bit. I think it has made me feel better that I don't have to worry as much because of the fact that um, for high school students, like grade 12 students, um, back in 2020, like we don't really have to worry about our marks anymore because the diploma exams are canceled. So I think that has also made me worry less. So it's definitely a very complex process. I feel a lot of different complex emotions.
I love that perspective. Thanks for being so open and honest.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
I think in my point of view, I was like in middle school when COVID first started, and I think especially in middle school, there's this big idea that we all kind of rely on our friends a lot, especially for our big emotions and it's the peak of puberty, so there are a lot of big emotions and friends become super important. And I think the idea that we went into lockdown and all this stuff and kind of distancing myself from my friends, I got to learn to depend a little bit more on myself and to have the time to think back on the way that things have been with my friends and my friendships and my current situations. And I think that's a great thing, actually.
Thank you very much for sharing. That is a quite a unique perspective, especially for many of us that's currently in university and high school. Kind of looking back, it does seem like to be a really tough social situation for those late elementary to middle schoolers. So thank you very much for sharing. And Nahani?
Oh yeah, I wanted to share a little bit maybe on my story with my relationship to self. I think before the pandemic, I cowered away a little bit from spending time alone in fear of addressing certain emotions and being forced into this state of solitude and uh, interdependence, right, of self. I I think that I've grown a lot and I've also become a lot more comfortable with myself and my feelings. So that's my short story on how I have changed my relationship to self throughout this time.
So for me, in terms of relationship to self, I do notice that I care about myself a bit more, and so I had a better time taking care of myself. And I have cut off a couple of toxic relationships, although it is one. However, the relationship involved deception, constant verbal harassment or in-person harassment before the pandemic, as well as stealing. The pandemic allowed me to realize which individuals are good for me and which individuals are not. And since we are not really in person anymore, it is much easier for me to cut this individual off because of a lack of in person harassment that I've been receiving. So while the pandemic started, both me and my mother has continually been receiving digital harassment from this individual. However, it is much easier to deal with. And so in a way, the pandemic did allow me to improve my relationship with self as well as self-care and a lot of personal situations. So yeah, so that's my perspective on that.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah, going off a little bit off of that, the second question is how have your relationships changed? And I thought that you really introed that because you talked about how things have changed in your life and how it affected you. So I wanted to ask if the two speakers have also experienced something similar or totally different, or how have your personal relationships changed?
I think mine was like pretty similar to Cindy's. It wasn't, I don't think it was as toxic as yours. That seems like a very difficult situation that you were in. Um, but yeah, I think, like I said before, like it's a lot simpler to take a step back and it's easier to distance yourself from the people that you have to distance yourself. I think that is like super correct. Um, and yeah, I did have a friend and I was very passive about this friendship, and I was always like the bad guy for multiple different reasons, and there was always complicated issues, and I'm super happy that I was able to take a step back and able to finally distance myself from that person, and I think that's great.
I think you made a good choice for yourself. I can understand how you felt throughout that relationship.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely interesting to hear about you guys' perspectives. And yeah, like I think um, the pandemic has, in some ways, helped us to kind of reevaluate our friendships and yeah, just reevaluate our relationships with people. It kind of, for me, it made me realize that um, so like during the lockdown, I it gave me a lot of opportunity to kind of reflect on what was going on in my life and just reflect the relationships that I have with people. Yeah, I think that like I was actually just I have been just looking past on like just my relationships with people. Um and again I feel completely empathetic about what you guys have been through. And yeah, I was actually since me and Sydney went to the same high school, I was actually a part of her journey with like just dealing with these kinds of relationships. And yeah, I'm really glad that Sydney was able to, overcome that. And yeah, and I think during this pandemic, I also got a chance to be grateful of the people who were in my life, who have always been there um, throughout my high school journey. So yeah, and also the fact that, since because of COVID, we have less opportunity to hang out with friends. I've also felt a bit disconnected from my friends, like even though we get to stay in touch on social media, but I can still feel that it's a little bit different from seeing each other in real life. And I think yeah, the number of times that I get to see my friends have been reduced quite a lot. So yeah, I will say that I do miss hanging out with my friends quite a lot. But definitely just going through all of this is like just a really big moment where I can reflect on my past friendships and my relationships with people. So I think the one main thing that I've felt about my relationships during this time period has been gratefulness. I have felt grateful for the people who have always been my side, and yeah, just gratefulness. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lindsay, for your perspective. And honestly, I'm also thankful that I met you in high school and how you
Me too.
supported me throughout certain interpersonal situations that I've been through. I'm pretty grateful that you were there with me. You're a really supportive friend, and I wish you the best on your journey to
Yeah,
university.
yeah, me too.
For me, I have a little bit of a different story with how my relationships have evolved. Prior to being forced to spend time on my own and forced to ration the amount of people that I have seen um, and that I connect with, I felt a lot of pressure to socialize outside of my immediate circle. And as an introvert, I didn't notice how much that was affecting my life. And having all this time alone, I realized that the first person I have to serve is myself and take care of is myself. So when it comes to hanging out with other people and engaging with other people, I feel this new sense of relief knowing that I can engage with whoever I want as long as they all obviously want to engage with me as well, but I don't feel obligated to push myself to always be that social person, that social outlet. And I think that's a little bit off on a tangent, but that's how I would answer that second question.
I think it's really great that you're branching out, Nahani, especially since there's something that we can learn from everybody. And by kind of pushing yourself out there to interact with people outside of your social circle is quite a good step towards a certain aspect of personal development. Initially, it may actually be challenging, but there's so much to gain from those experiences. So for me, I think that the COVID-19, similar to Wenzi's experience, is that I also do miss my friends and spending time with them, but I also noticed that it actually improved my relationship with some of my close friends as well as family members because I have the ability and the time to kind of evaluate my interpersonal relationships and kind of more easily managing those relationships, and that is also something I'm grateful for. And similar to Wenzi's experience, I also had an experience with gratitude with those individuals who are truly supportive on my side and really helped me like remove the one toxic best friend that leeching off my time out of my life. And right after cutting that off, it just feels like life is just so much easier and less stressful, and just felt like I had an enormous giant anvil lifted off my shoulders, and life actually improved once you remove certain toxic influences within your life. And although I understand that by book, but I never really experienced it in my cognizant lifetime. So it is it is also an experience with a certain aspect of learning, you could say. So on with the next question. Have you noticed any changes in motivation as a result of changes in your daily routine?
For me, so yeah, I would say almost quite absolutely. So I think that especially in the beginning when the lockdown first happened, I found that since I didn't need to wake up early to go to school anymore, I found it difficult to keep up with my with the regular sleep schedule. And I think it started to get better as high school ended because like summer holiday came. And also, but at the same time, in September, where university started, and we're special. Like as the year of 2020 students, we kind of have to, get adjusted to a brand new um institution, a brand new educational institution, while um doing it online. So I think that in my first semester, in my first term of university, which was last September, I also felt quite a bit. I wouldn't say demotivated though, but I would say a bit overwhelmed with having to adjust to so many new things. And yeah, that's my take on this.
I definitely have felt less motivated, especially with schooling, especially when we were in full lockdown in the beginning of March last year. Part of why I really wanted to have this discussion was actually to reflect back on that time because now that it's been a year, I think a lot of lessons can be learned from that learning experience of schooling. I'm not sure if you guys who have gone from grade 12 to universities this year have experienced this big gap that I have felt in understanding because the education system waived a whole bunch of subjects or concepts because we were in emergency learning. But I think that it's okay to feel a little bit behind, especially in school in these scenarios. It's okay to not be doing your best, and it's okay to be working really, really hard towards being your best. And I think that self forgiveness is one lesson that I've really reinforced in myself during this year. Um, but yeah, I wanted to know a little bit more about your take on this education gap that I've been feeling and how it has resulted in your guys' motivation. Because I definitely felt a huge weight on myself and felt like I had reached a wall.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that, Nahani. Yes, yeah, I would say so because um, during the lockdown, because of the fact that students don't really have to worry about their grades because diplomas are kind of canceled, because we felt demotivated to work, I kind of retreated from keeping up with my online classes because of the fact that we didn't really have to worry about our grades. So as university started in September, I have also felt that there's a big gap in learning. It's like because I haven't been working on schoolwork for many months, so I felt like it's like a really big change where I have to suddenly um, just adjust my schedule and also increase my work ethic. So I would say that in terms of my study habits and my working schedules, yes, I would say that there is definitely a gap here. Yeah, so I relate to that too. So you're definitely not alone.
So kind of adding on both comments, I kind of experienced an opposite effect in terms of how the pandemic kind of affected my productivity. So for me, during high school, I actually had some physical issues where I cannot attend classes regularly, so that did have a bit of stunt on my grade. And the pandemic allowed a more flexible schedule as well as you don't need to be physical present in the lecture, which like actually helped me a lot in terms of my performance as well as focus because I don't have to experience the negative physical effect of my health at the time and right now. So that actually increased my productivity as well as allowing me to attend the summer semester right before university started to kind of work ahead. So with that, I think that it actually had a positive effect on my scheduling as well as motivation and productivity. So, what about you, Cassiopeia?
I think I do feel kind of both sides. I totally understand that, like, everything it was a little bit easier, but like Nahani said, like, I feel like after, like, I get into this cycle of, you wake up late and then you don't get dressed, and then it's just super hard to get motivated to actually do something, right? And I think, um, like, I don't know, like, I think it's weird because it just kind of spirals down into this abyss of like scrolling on your phone for hours, and then it's like, okay, maybe 5 more minutes and I'll do my homework, and then an hour later it's like you're still scrolling. That's definitely something that I felt for sure. And the learning gap that they were talking about, I think is super real. And because like even like I haven't spoken French in like more than 6 months. Like when I got to school, like more than 6 months, I hadn't spoken French. And I was like, what even? I don't know. I went to French class and it was just so difficult. And yeah, I think I definitely had a few motivation like problems, but I think also on your side, Cindy, like I feel like after there was this big gap of motivation, it was like, like after a whole bunch of hard stuff, you kind of start to learn how to manage your time a little bit better. And I think I see a little bit of both sides
Yeah,
in
and I
this.
also, oh, are you done, Cassiopeia?
Yes, I'm done.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah, I also just wanted to add on to what Cindy was saying. Which is why like I find this interview interesting because it's nice to hear about people's other experiences, and in turn, it also helped me to reflect more on what I was going through. And indeed, like I can also like understand like the other side because I can also I've also noticed that one thing about online school which is advantageous is definitely the flexibility of it all. And actually not not having the necessity of waking up so early, it has actually helped me to gain more sleep. So yeah, I would also say that there are some benefits to this side. Yeah.
I love that we ended on that question on a positive note because it can seem like a very hard question to ask about motivation. Um, but it was really nice to get that positive side. I also wanted to ask you guys, have you felt lost or overwhelmed due to COVID, and how have you combated it, that feeling?
I think personally, um, yeah, like it can be super overwhelming that it's such a big change in like all of our societies. Like you look at like the way that we lived like a little bit more than a year ago, and it was so different. Like the lifestyle was so different. And like I think I've talked about this with my friends a lot, the fact that we see shows that have like public spaces and people aren't wearing masks, and to us it's weird to see like people without masks in a public space. And I think that can be like really overwhelming, this like huge change. And I think it's super stressful the fact that you don't really know when you're going to be able to live life the way you can again. You don't really know when you're going to be able to hang out with your friends again or to just relax because um, like you don't really know when there's going to be another lockdown, when you're going to be quarantined. Like right now I'm quarantined and it's spring break and it sucks, but like there isn't really much I can do about it because that's what the school told me to do. Um, and yeah, I think that can be really overwhelming.
I can understand your standpoint, Casopia. So it really makes sense because as humans and as a collective, when there's such a huge change in terms of living and what you're able and not able to do anymore. So on a psychological perspective, this actually increases the chance of developing depression as well as anxiety and increase of stress because for many individuals it's actually very difficult mentally and emotionally adapt to such changes. And I can understand like where you're coming from because the ambiguity of this all actually increases the fear within many individuals in our society today who are also affected by the pandemic. For certain businesses, they don't know when their business is going to flourish again and whether or not going to an economic crisis. For many, like they don't even know like how they're going to do financially. And I agree, all these stressors are very impactful for individuals, both mental, even physical wellness, because with such changes at the beginning, and it is going to be really hard for everybody, but what I find is that after 2 weeks, for me, I actually adapted to the way of life of quarantine and find ways to kind of spend my time. Like I got like these tanks of fish. I got a whole basement of plants. Like I had the basement of plants before, but I got a bigger collection of plants now, like through propagation. When the COVID starts, I propagated even more, and now like my whole entire basement turned into a greenhouse. And there's many ways that like people can adapt to such changes, but for some I can understand that there are certain personality types that makes it really difficult for them to adapt to those changes, and that's really concerning because there's various mental health factors that contributes to that, and we can only hope for the best for those individuals. And that's sorry, I went out a bit long.
No, that's okay. And I think it's a really important point to make because that's the reason why we're having this conversation to promote that feeling and to promote that it's okay to not be okay, right? Especially during this time. And going back to what you said about mental health, as someone who experiences depressive thought, I really struggled with being isolated because that uncertainty caused time to feel endless, and I didn't really know how to reach out. I didn't really know what to do with myself. So I definitely felt lost and overwhelmed. I think that it caused me to research and to look into my emotions because I couldn't run away from them. And because of that, I found out that if you're afraid, the best thing you can do is inform yourself. Or at least for me, it's from my experience. So the way that I combated this was through education, through information, through networking with other people, and that's why I'm very thankful to be here with you guys and have this candid conversation.
Thank you very much for sharing, Nahani. I can definitely understand how you're feeling. A couple of my friends are also feeling the same way throughout pandemic, and I can just understand because they're very extroverted and they're very social, and they oftentimes do depend on external social stimulus to kind of balance their life out. And once that's lost, it's really hard. But if you ever need, there's always resources for you to reach out to.
Yeah, and my take on this question is that, so first of all, it's really interesting to hear about you guys' perspective. I think that I can definitely extract some of you guys' experience and yeah, I would say that I relate to those because I've also felt that way. So I think I have like definitely felt overwhelmed, mainly from uh all of the information that we consume about COVID. Like a lot of I've been like especially in the beginning, I read lots of news and did a lot of research about COVID-19, and yeah, I would say that that made me overwhelmed because of just knowing a lot of information and just like I need some time to kind of digest and just process what was going on. And yeah, just uh I would say that I have felt overwhelmed from just what was happening in the world. So in order to combat it, I would say that sometimes I try to distance myself from absorbing too much news and just giving myself some time to take some breaks from reading the news and such. And yeah, I would say that just I've just felt overwhelmed with just what was happening in the world and just concerns about when when things are gonna get back to normal again. But at the same time, I've also felt that I was able to adapt to yeah, I think I was able to adapt to lockdown because I felt that, doing things like these does help to, mitigate a pandemic, just, staying at home and lockdown and yeah, wearing masks and such, even though I do understand that there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of it's just really, I guess you could say, annoying to do all of these things. But I think like the fact that me doing all these things could help with, the pandemic, I think I was able to, overcome this yeah, lockdown.
Yeah, also for me, similar to Wincy's experience, I also did felt a bit overwhelmed in the beginning because there's just so little that we know about this coronavirus, and there's also a lot of misinformation that was spreading around throughout social media, so that
Yeah.
was quite concerning. And similarly to a lot of statements that was stated previously, there was this sense of unknowing and ambiguity of when all of this is going to end, like what is going to happen next, and how or when are we going to solve this global problem? And seeing those individuals who does not abide by the rules and regulations really overwhelms and stresses me out because I know this may be disappointing to many, but there's a large portion of individuals that are very undisciplined and seek pleasure in ways that put the good of the collective at risk. And this is something that many of us are also angry about. So that also gives me the increased sense of anxiety at the first 2 months of the lockdown. Me and Winzy are at the same high school at the time, and right before the lockdown kind of starts, there were these warnings, but you can also see that there are a lot of people who does not take this pandemic seriously, and that is something that really overwhelms me. But knowing that there isn't much that I can do about it is something that stresses me out and overwhelms me even more. And the only way that I can cope with it is kind of doing my schoolwork, my personal projects, or taking care of my plants and fish. Like, the way that I kind of combat this sense of overwhelming is through other activities and work, because they did say that the best way to kind of deal with either grief, overwhelm, stress, or sadness is through work, and that is what I did. What will you consider to be the most impactful stressor of this current period, and have you developed ways of minimizing its negative effects?
Yeah, so my take on that is that I found school and family. So I'll elaborate more on that. So when it comes to school, just having to do schoolwork for university during this uncertain period is I think it's a big stress. It's an impactful stressor because so staying at home and having to keep up with a schedule is a bit hard because so first of all just the fact that as I was saying before, sometimes when we're at home there's a lot of distractions like our cell phones, social media, so sometimes it's easy to get distracted and also demotivated because of the fact that um because of these distractions and also just inherent the inherent quality of school, like the fact that it's online, sometimes makes me a bit demotivated to work because I felt that I've lost something from doing school online. Like, and in some ways, definitely there are advantages to online school in that there's more flexibility, but at the same time, I do miss that on campus experience. And yeah, another impact that I was talking about was family. And they're kind of intertwined with like school, having to do school at home, and also just, being with my family all the time means that there's a lot to worry about when I'm at home because there's a lot of issues that they deal with that I felt that I should also help out with. So just it's like there's no longer as much space for myself to focus on my schoolwork because I am doing schoolwork at home because yeah, just being with my family all the time means that I have to worry about their I spend more time thinking and worrying about their issues because of the fact that I'm at home. Yeah, that's my take on this.
I think I totally sympathize with like your statement on having it be a little bit stressful when you have to think about your family a lot. At my house, I think yeah, like spending time with my family a whole bunch. I mean, this is a little bit different from what you said, but I think like Nahani said, like I'm not super an introvert, but I do need some time for myself. And I think everyone kind of sorry, I need to kind of rephrase this. Everyone deals with this COVID thing differently, right? So some people want to spend more time with their family. Some people, they're not super comfortable being with their family all the time, right? And I think a lot of my family really wants to spend more time together. And I don't know, I feel like as someone who needs some time for myself, that was a little bit difficult for me because it was like they were constantly like I don't know, they were constantly like bothering me about little things like having my door closed or something like that. And I think that can be super stressful and it was super stressful for me um, because there's really no escape to the family problems at that point because you have to stay home. Um, but I think a positive side to it is that I was able to, instead of running away from those problems, I was able to kind of, actually talk about it and confront it and kind of manage my time. Even when I'm at home, I'm able to kind of take a break and go for a walk, and I think that's great for me.
Yeah, and just wanted to add on what Cassiopeia was saying. Like also like the positive side, right? And also how I managed to minimize its negative effects. I would say that I kind of like shifted my mindset about having to deal with interact with my family all the time. Is that like there's a good side with having a time period to interact with our family so much is that I felt like we now have a deeper connection with each other, whereas I feel like before um I feel like right now my family members have became more open with me with what they're going through in their life, and I think that there is like this is a positive thing that like it would be it's nice to get to know about what my how my family is doing, But at the same time, sometimes you can get overwhelmed just having to worry about them all the time. And also when it comes to school, like schoolwork, what I did to minimize its negative effects is to kind of, like what Nahani was saying, tell ourselves that, like, it's okay to not be okay sometimes, especially during this uncertain time period. It's okay to fall behind on schoolwork just because of the uncertainty of all. So I think just changing my mindset kind of helps with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think maybe I didn't make it clear before, but like after all of this kind of like weirdness with my family, yeah, I was able to confront it, and now, like you said, like I was able to get a little bit closer with my family, and I think that's actually a super beautiful thing that we were able to do.
Yeah, that's true.
For me, the biggest stressor wasn't actually, well, most of it was actually family, but since you guys have already touched on it, the second most impactful, stressful thought was uncertainty. As I mentioned before, I really don't deal well with uncertainty and prolonged periods of time with in solitude, which is exactly what COVID was for me or is for me currently. So the way that I dealt with not being certain of the future or of the present, I like I mentioned before, I informed myself, but I also just learned to accept that I will most likely not know for a while. And that acceptance was really hard. It was really hard to muster myself up to that point. But um, it's another lesson that I had to learn here.
For me, one of the greater stressor, more related to schooling and education, and like mostly the stressor is more about organizations in terms of those schoolings and like certain education facilities. So at the university I'm currently attending, there are some mandatory courses that are always full, or there wasn't enough spaces available to accommodate all students that require it or needs it. And so for me, like there was this course that I was trying to get into because it is required for my major. For both this semester and for summer semester, like it is always full. And when I contact the faculty of science about it, like to ask about space and scheduling and alternative methods to work around it, like the response that I get is always either vague or it takes more than a month for them to reply, which is a huge stressor because of current COVID situation. Like there are a lot of individuals that need a certain number of people to kind of fill the space, but there isn't enough qualified applicants. What I saw like during my first year of uni is like this is very stressful for me because I had this TA for a lab and they do not know what they're doing at all, and that affects marking. And it's like it is just a very unstable situation for all the students, and like it is the result of a lack of qualified applicants, because during these times people have different plans, and it's yeah, it's pretty tough. So yeah, so that's kind of my perspective on like my greatest stressor right now. So
If you guys had a piece of advice for a past version of self, newly entering quarantine and this period in general, what would it be?
Well, I think I would say I would say that there's quite a lot to say, but first of all, yeah, I would just tell myself that, like, it's okay to feel what you're going through right now, um because yeah, like I've felt a lot of just I felt overwhelmed about the situation when we were first in lockdown. There was a lot of uncertainty, and it's kind of okay. Like another thing that I would tell myself is it's kind of it might be a little bit anticlimactic for like the whole discussion about mental health, but I might also spoil myself with what's going to happen in the future so that I could at least know what's going to happen in the future where I could feel a bit less overwhelmed so that I know at least what's going on. But okay, back to the mental health topic. I would say that um, because I have also felt overwhelmed throughout the quarantine because the cases kept going up and the deaths and stuff. It's kind of overwhelming that I felt a bit frustrated that I couldn't really do anything about it. And to be honest, I would have like I would have told myself that like just me doing my job to like staying at home wearing masks and stuff is already the best that I can do. And uncertainty in life just happens, and like it's kind of like throughout human history. I'm kind of getting a bit nerdy, but throughout human history, uncertain events have always happened, and yeah, I would tell myself that it's okay, like that these uncertain events are going on, and yeah, just as long as you do your best to just um, so keep yourself healthy and also um, care for others around you. As you might not be able to stop the whole pandemic because nobody can really do that, but as long as you care for yourself and also care for others around you, I would say that yeah, I would say that you've done a good job. Like honestly, you've done your best. And yeah, that's my take on it for now. I don't know if there's more things to add, but I wanted to hear what you guys think. Yeah.
I think I totally agree with what Nahani said as well. I think forgiving yourself is a super it's a super big component to staying in a healthy mindset, especially during this period. And also, I thought it was really funny what you said, Wenzi, about kind of like spoiling it. I think I would totally tell myself that we're going to be here for a long time. Like, this is a long ride.
I would tell myself that the only constant in life is that there is no constant, that it's ever moving. So and to accept that emotions, like life, they ebb and flow, they come and they go. And even if you're having the worst day, someone out of the 7 billion people on earth have to have the worst day, and then it passes, so just like you can never promise that you'll be happy forever, that you won't be unhappy forever. So that's the advice that I would give myself. And as bittersweet as that sounds, I would just tell myself to take a deep breath and accept that this is our situation for a little while and that it passes. So thanks for everyone for sharing. I thought it was such a intricate and important conversation. I really did. And as we kind of close this off, do you guys have any questions, or do you want to jump in and say something?
Yeah, just wanted to say, like I found this interview was quite fun. It was fun talking to you guys, and yeah, these were really great questions. So thank you guys for writing. I don't know if you guys wrote. Did you guys write this?
Yeah, we did.
Whoa, yeah, these are good questions. I like them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this was really engaging and really interesting to see other points of view and stuff.
Yeah.
So let's hope that the audio worked out so we can share with the listeners today. But thank you so much for our speakers, and thanks for everyone who tunes in the future and listens to this. And I hope that in some way this can help someone. It was a pleasure to connect with you all, to talk about how the past year has affected us and reflecting back on COVID-19. And I think that's all I have to say for now.
We hope the ideas we shared and everyone has shared today were as helpful and inspirational to those that could tune in as they were to us. If you would like to participate as a speaker for our next podcast or webinar, feel free to sign up using the link in our Instagram bio at FurYourMindYYC. You can also connect us with questions or new ideas through our email at info@furyourmind.com or through our Instagram as well. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation today, and we hope to see you at more For Mind events in the future. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone have a great rest of your day.